My name is Claddy, and today I want to do something chill. I don't want to apply any makeup today because, yeah, like normally around this time I wouldn't mind applying some makeup for the fun of it, but I feel like I just want to talk about something a little bit fun, a little bit more easy peasy for me. So I'll pick eyeshadow palettes because it's just my favorite thing in the grand scheme of things when it comes to makeup. For that reasons, I want to do a little eyeshadow palette collection tag. I just looked up one and I'm gonna follow the questions in that video. The video I watched is from Nell Thompson's, and I think the original idea came from Amy Loves Makeup. I will remember to link the two videos, also the channels down below. There are gonna be how many questions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 questions, meaning a palette to show you. Let's start off with the first one. If I picked an eyeshadow palette in my collection that represents me, as in the color story, I have to admit that I really like this eyeshadow palette tag because it's not just about a palette, whether it's your favorite palette, whether it's your neutral, colorful palette, but rather it concentrates the idea of eyeshadow palettes down to a concept, like an inspiration or a representation that we're feeling in you. I think this is a really cool set of questions. So the palette that represent me is in the color story. No question asked, but I definitely picked this Ace of Beauty Amethyst Crystal Gemstone palette. This palette, it has been my #1 palette for a while already. So when I think of a May color story, I think of something mauvey and rosy. I don't want anything too bright or too cool tone or too grungy, too deep. To represent me, it has to be something like down in the middle like this. It has a lot of mid-tone mattes and mid-tone shimmers. That's what I like. When sometimes I don't want to overcomplicate my look, I can just go for one matte and call it a day. I could go for one shimmer as a one and done. And this palette is just the perfect selections of all of the shades that I want to wear on my daily basis. I really like you can go in these directions and go for something more blue grayish, more cool tone, like a little bit on the deeper side, but you can definitely go with lighter. You have some lighter mattes and lighter shimmers around here, but I think my favorite is still some of the neutral browns with a hint of mauve undertone. It also means that if I could ever make or create an eyeshadow palette for myself, it would be something similar to this. Like, guarantee I will take a lot of inspirations from this palette and I love using it. This is an older palette in my collection. It has already been discontinued, I think a while ago, and yeah, they don't have this palette anymore, but I guess throughout the years it has been proven to be so reliable and still one of my favorites, and so far it hasn't changed much in terms of this is my color story. The second question is, if I picked an eyeshadow palette in my collection that represents me as in the packaging, so I pull out this Passion in Paris palette from BH Cosmetics. One again, this palette is already discontinued, but I have such strong connection with this palette, not because of the destinations that is mentioned in this palette, simply because I believe this is my favorite imagery of Paris that have been captured on this palette. I think the colors in this photo is really, really good. It has this purple to orange gradient, and everything has these gradual transitions and distinctive but blended together so well. I feel like I really, really love this tonal color. So transitioning from orange to a bit of pink and to the deep purple of the night. And I really, really like how they took the photo and also capture all of the lights in this residence right here. I don't have any affiliations or any self-interest towards Paris as a city. I think it's a beautiful historical city. I would want to visit it one day, going around just to explore the history of the city. But personally, like I could live here, take it. I don't mind if I could never go to Paris in my life. But to me, aesthetics why I think whoever took this photo, they deserve raised. One thing that I missed is that the arrangement of colors are really nice as well. Like you have a gradient, but when you look at the river, you see the lights reflected on the river. But the background of the color is a deep purple, but then you have some orange bright lights shining through. So I think when they decided to capture the moment, I think they said the timing is really, really bright. So you can see, yeah, it's just the way that orange and purple are incorporated and put together in this photo. It's just so, it reminds me of something valuable, something precious, the colors that I want to keep and preserved in my life, if that makes sense. The third question is, if I picked an eyeshadow palette in my collection that represents spring, this is, I guess, an unusual choice to me, but I pull out this Nomad Berlin Underground palette. So it has a selection of green and yellow and earthy tones. So to me, spring is a celebration of harvest, probably from my culture and from Vietnam. And I think a lot of Southeast Asian countries that celebrate spring, also Lunar New Year, is a chance to wish for a year of successful crops. So everything that's earthy, that reminds them of supple grounds so that they can grow crops and can sow the seeds would be something that admirable and desirable. So all the earthy tones in this palette are just like on point to me. And the green in this palette reminds me of the sticky rice cake that we eat during Lunar New Year celebrations. It's basically rice cake wrapped in banana leaves, so it has this like greenish color, just like infused in the color of the glutinous rice. And in my hometown, we have a tradition to display this beautiful yellow flower. I don't know what it's called. I don't know the English name of that type of flowers, but it's different. Like the north of Vietnam, they display a different type of flower, but I'm from the south, so we have this yellow flower that's so reminiscent of that spring season. And I think to me this palette is the spring of Vietnam in May, not necessarily spring in other parts of the world, so I cannot speak of those regions. But just the green, the yellow reminds me so much of spring in Vietnam. And yeah, it brings me so much joy just to look at this palette and realize that's the spring that I remember. Next one, if I pick an eyeshadow palette in my collections that represents happy or joy. Once again, this is probably to you an unexpected answer, but I pull out my Tatte's Pro palette. It brings me so much joy in the way that every time I reach for this palette, I can trust it to deliver me the most reliable and consistent looks. And I remember the first time I started to have some sort of interest in makeup, and I was like, ooh, what if one day I could buy a high-end eyeshadow palette. And this is, I think, the first real palette. I used to have a little quad from Clinique before, but it came from a gift set, so I wouldn't count it as an eyeshadow palette. So this is the first genuine eyeshadow palette in my collection, and it's a high-end eyeshadow palette, so I was so proud in that moment. I just remember playing with it and having so much fun with it. You have 16 mattes in this palette. I don't care about the 4 shimmers. I don't really use them. I think they are okay, but quite lackluster. But the mattes in this palette is so beautiful. And this nostalgic reasons here is that it reminds me of the joy of not knowing how to properly do my makeup, but then all of a sudden you blend a matte on your crease and wow, there's a look, and it's quite beautiful. And every time you go back to this palette, you can already know that, oh, the look's gonna be medium to good to excellent. That's makes me happy in a lot of ways. I don't know. Ooh, if I pick an eyeshadow palette in my collection that represents the dark and grungy in me, of course, I will pick my Rust palette from MAC Cosmetics. This is a warm tone color story, but it's so grungy. I don't understand how could they do that. But they did, because previously when I think of a dark grungy eyeshadow palette, I thought of something gray and basically black, because I thought those are the color story that fits in that emo, very heavy metal vibe. But this palette, once again, it redefines in me what grungy is. So you can have some very moody, very mucky tones without making it too cool tone, too gray. And the fact that it incorporates some of the warm tones, like here, so you have this mustardy shade transition into like a warm brown, but then you have the sections right here. It has a rosy, these three has a little bit of rosy red undertones. These two are even like deeper, a little bit dark, a little bit blackened, a little bit purplish. So I think this is a well executed palette that gives me an inspiration of doing a grungy look. We have 3 more questions left. If I picked an eyeshadow palette in my collection that represents the girly in me, wow, I haven't used this palette in a while, but the girly in me would love a look from this ColourPop Cloud Spun palette. It's a monochromatic pink palette, but it's so appropriate. And I just love the quality in this palette. Sometimes ColourPops will deliver the most horrendous glitter shade, but sometimes, yeah, there's still a glitter shade in the middle, but then the matte in this palette is really, really good. Also, they put a super shock in this palette and the 2 shimmers, 3. Yeah, the 3 shimmers, 1, 2, and 3. They are really, really nice. I will pull out maybe an old photo of me. My go-to look every time I reach for this palette is an halo semi-cut crease, so a matte on the inner corner and the outer corner, and just a light shimmer in the middle, probably like these two in the middle, but yeah, maybe I have not been connected with my girly part, but oh, I think this palette is still very pretty. If I pick an eyeshadow palette in my collection that represents fun, the fun part in me really appreciated this palette. This is In a Trance, also from ColourPop. This is so fun. You have blue, you have purple, and you have pink. And this shimmers right here is called Mind's Eye, and this clarity shade is also a super shock. These two, this like bluish periwinkle, is just one of my favorite color for all time, and I use this shimmer a lot. And if you top it up with this super shock, it doesn't have any base in it. It's just a iridescent eyeshadow with a lot of purple and blue reflect. But I like the way that I play with the three main colors in this palette, but they are also pastel. So it's even more fun in that way, so you don't have any depth. So this palette is very light, a very mid-tone. I wouldn't call it mid-tone, it's very light, but then just to create a full look out of it, huh, it's just so much fun. I say it and I'll say it again. I missed that part of myself not too long ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, that could just pull out a light pastel palette like this and just create a look, like mix 3 different colors together, and then, well, I have a look and I don't really mind what the result would be. Finally, if I pick an eyeshadow palette in my collections that represent inspiration, this is more of a cheat answer, because this Dollhouse palette from Glen Bunny, the inspirations is quite obvious. Like, I don't need to think of what look I should create. I think the most inspired aspect of this palette is that they already arranged the color stories for me. So you have the orange color story, the purple, the green one, the, I guess, a deep mauvey one, the pink one, and the green, yellow, grungy ones. It's also inspiring because you have everything in this palette. You can reach for this palette as a utility palette. You have a lot of mattes, you have beautiful shimmers in this palette, and it helps my brain finding inspirations within a colorful color story like this, because I'm not that skilled and artistic when it comes to makeup, so I might need some guidance to find the combinations of the colors that I like. But when you arrange them by tonal value like this, or like lighter matte, medium matte, and deeper matte, it's really easy for me to navigate, oh, which matte should I use first and what next, and what should I top up on top of those mattes. So I think this palette is my ultimate inspirations. I've just discovered it last year, but so far, so good. So that's it. That's my eyeshadow palette collection tag. I have so much fun just going through my collection once again and pull out this palette for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. Once again, I'm Cloudy, and hopefully we see each other again. Bye.